In this section, we'll cover the practical aspects of conducting data collection, including planning surveys, training and managing the collection team, writing manuals, and tips for data entry, including the pros and cons of electronic data collection versus pen and paper. Planning for surveys involves creating a budget and a timeline as you would with any other project. You can base this information on experience of others who have conducted research in the area. This gives you an orientation point for the costs that you can expect in association with the data collection. Take into consideration how much effort might be needed to contact the population that you're targeting. It can take more resources to find and interview certain groups of individuals. For example, people who work during the day might be more difficult to contact. Are there going to be people traveling at the time, migrating for work, or other issues like this? You should count on delays and extra expenses which invariably occur in all surveys. The time frame of a survey might look something like this. The first step is getting funding sorted and getting permission from the appropriate authorities when it's necessary. During this time, one can also work on developing questionnaires and developing the sample strategy for the study. After the basics have been developed, it's time to hire staff and begin training them. Note that while the basics of the survey have been thought out and planned, at least some enumerators should be hired before the final design is completed. Staff should be trained, then should participate in a pilot survey in which problems are identified and fixed. After this, the fieldwork begins in earnest. Then, after, or possibly still during, data collection, the data entry process begins. The final step is to clean and process the data before analyzing it and presenting results. Surveys are usually prepared in English and then translated to a local language. The proper way to do this is to use the process of back translation. This involves one person translating from English to the local language, and then a separate person who is not familiar with the English version translating back from the local language into English. This makes it possible to confirm that nothing is lost in translation, even if you yourself do not understand the local language in which the survey will be administered. You may have to prepare translations in multiple languages if there's not one universally understood language in the area. If you leave translations up to enumerators to do on the fly while they're doing the survey, you might end up with questions that are asked in different ways by different enumerators. Also, this can lead to problems in accuracy of responses if people are surveyed in a language in which they're not completely fluent. The typical staff needed for a survey include a project manager who oversees the project. You might consider hiring consultants as well with specialized knowledge to help in developing surveys, analyzing data, and interpreting the results. A local team consists of enumerators who actually administer the survey, as well as field supervisors to coordinate the enumerators while they're in the field. After data is collected, it might be necessary to hire extra staff to enter the data electronically. And lastly, you'll likely need logistics staff, sometimes drivers, especially in rural areas, who transport other staff to and from the field. Training supervisors and enumerators is one of the most crucial steps in good data collection. This involves giving consistent training to all staff, which prevents any differences in the way that questions on the survey are interpreted. You should go through the entire survey with the enumerators and discuss each question one by one. Enumerators should have the chance to practice administering the survey with actual strangers before going into the field to collect data. In some cases, it might be better to leave the enumerators in the dark about the purposes of the study. The reason for this is that consciously or even subconsciously, if they know the goal of the survey, then this might influence the way in which questions are asked and the way in which answers are recorded. Even after the team has been trained, you should periodically check back with the enumerators to make sure that there are no changes in the way that the questions are being asked, and also to make sure that they're not forgetting about anything in the procedure. It's important that data be collected in a consistent way throughout the course of the study, and this means checking back on enumerators to make sure that they're not changing anything in the way things are done. When hiring and training enumerators, it's important to keep in mind that not everyone has the proper skill set to do this type of work. And just because someone is competent and effective in doing other work does not mean that they're necessarily going to be a good enumerator. This type of work is very repetitive, and it might be boring for some people, and this can lower the quality of the data that they're collecting. If you have enough resources, the best thing to do is you can decide who to hire after you observe the candidates during training. You can see them interacting with actual respondents before you make final decisions about who to hire and who to let go. If you're running a larger survey, you'll want to hire supervisors as well to be responsible for teams of enumerators. This person will usually be an enumerator themselves, who directly administers surveys, but will also have some small administrative responsibilities. They'll be responsible for knowing the protocol a bit better, and they should also be prepared to handle problems as they arise. The supervisor is also in charge of making decisions in the field. This will avoid any arguments between enumerators, as it'll be clear exactly who is in charge. The supervisor should also have the responsibility of communicating any problems to headquarters, keeping the project managers aware of how the research is progressing, and this is especially true if data is gathered in remote locations where the project manager cannot visit on a regular basis.